The movie starts in a colorful, animated world. A narrator tells us about a magical place called Andalasia. We meet the main characters, including Queen Nerissa, who is mean and only cares about herself. She's worried that if her stepson, Prince Edward, gets married, she'll lose her power. So, she makes sure he never finds a wife. Meanwhile, in a cute little fairy tale house, a girl named Giselle is making a statue of the prince she dreams of. Her animal friends help by bringing her things to finish the statue. She uses a jug for the face, gems for the eyes, and dried leaves for the hair, but she can't figure out what to use for the lips. While she thinks about it, she starts singing about her dream prince. At the same time, Prince Edward is out hunting trolls with his servant, Nathaniel. Nathaniel compliments Edward on his troll hunting skills, but Edward says he'd rather find someone to sing with him about true love's kiss. Suddenly, he hears Giselle's song and is captivated by it. He rides off on his white horse to find where the singing is coming from. Nathaniel, scared that the queen will be angry if Edward meets a girl, tries to distract him with the troll, but it doesn't work. In a panic, Nathaniel lets the troll go, hoping it will stop Edward from finding love. The troll reaches Giselle's house first and starts chasing her. Giselle escapes through the chimney and climbs a tree, but she slips and starts to fall. Just in time, Prince Edward catches her. The two fall in love right away and decide to get married the next day. Queen Nerissa watches everything through her magical orb and decides she must stop the wedding no matter what. On the wedding day, Giselle arrives at the palace in a carriage with her animal friends. She happily runs up the palace stairs while her bird friends help her get ready. But Nathaniel locks the door behind her, leaving the animals outside. As Giselle heads to meet Prince Edward, an old woman stops her and tricks her into going to a wishing well. The old woman is actually Queen Nerissa in disguise. While Giselle stands by the well, wishing for a happy future, Nerissa pushes her in. Pip, the squirrel, sees this and runs to tell Prince Edward. Giselle falls through the well and ends up in a glowing galaxy. There, she turns into a shooting star and lands on a manhole cover. When she climbs out, she's no longer animated but a real person. She finds herself in Times Square, New York. Confused and scared by the busy streets and fast cars, she causes a few small accidents. The crowd pushes her into a subway station where she ends up in a dark alley. A beggar steals her tiara. Meanwhile, Robert, a divorce lawyer, is talking to a client about settlements. His secretary reminds him to pick up his daughter, Morgan, and asks if he's told Morgan about his plans to marry his girlfriend, Nancy. Robert says he hasn't but plans to give Morgan a special gift to soften the news. On the way home in a cab with Morgan, Robert gives her a book about important women and explains that he's going to propose to Nancy. He tells Morgan that nothing will change and that Nancy will be a great addition to their family. At the same time, Giselle, now soaking wet from the rain, sees a billboard with a picture of a palace. Thinking it's real, she climbs toward it and knocks on the door. Just then, Robert's cab stops nearby, and Morgan, excited to see a princess in a palace, runs over to Giselle. Robert follows Morgan as she runs toward Giselle, but Giselle slips and falls right onto him. He asks if she wants to call someone, but she says the person she needs won't hear her from here. Next, Robert, Morgan, and Giselle walk to Robert's apartment building. As they enter, Giselle excitedly tells Morgan how an old lady pushed her into a well, which brought her to their world. Robert reminds Giselle that she can't stay. He only brought her to dry off and call for help. Morgan really wants her dad to let Giselle stay, but he says no. Giselle, completely exhausted, falls asleep on the couch. As Robert calls a cab to send her away, he notices how peaceful and innocent she looks while sleeping. This softens his heart, and he changes his mind. He decides to let her stay for the night and gives her Morgan's room, asking Morgan to sleep with him instead. Meanwhile, Prince Edward, along with Pip the squirrel, jumps into the magic well and arrives in Times Square. Edward immediately points his sword at a sewer worker, demanding to know where Giselle is. He thinks the workers are working for the old lady and orders them to find Giselle while he sets off to search for her himself. Pip, however, realizes he can no longer talk in this world. Back at Robert's apartment, Giselle wakes up and finds the place messy. She goes to the window and calls out to birds and small animals to help her clean. Soon, pigeons, rats, cockroaches, and other creatures arrive, and together, they clean the entire apartment in a magical, fairy tale-like way. While trying to stack dishes, a pigeon accidentally breaks a plate, making a loud noise. This wakes up Morgan, who is amazed by the magical scene. She wakes Robert, and both try to get the animals out of the house. Robert then goes to talk to Giselle, but she's in the bathroom taking a shower. When he steps inside, he's surprised to see pigeons wrapping a towel around her. Giselle, who's never seen a shower before, asks him about the water coming from above. At that moment, Nancy arrives to pick up Morgan for school. She's surprised to see how clean the apartment looks. Inside the bathroom, as Robert tries to leave, he and Giselle accidentally bump into the pigeons, causing him to slip and fall, with Giselle landing on top of him. Just then, Nancy walks in and sees them in that position, immediately getting the wrong idea. Furious, she storms out and Robert runs after her, but she quickly gets into a cab and leaves. When Robert returns to the apartment, he's even more shocked to see Giselle wearing a dress she made from his curtains. Frustrated, he explains that Nancy now thinks something happened between them, ruining his plan to propose to her. Angry, he tells Giselle she has to leave. Just then, Morgan interrupts, reminding them that she's late for school. Meanwhile, Queen Nerissa, watching everything through her magical orb, becomes furious. She realizes that if Edward finds Giselle, things could go terribly wrong. To stop this, she orders Nathaniel to follow Edward and jump into the well. Nathaniel obeys and soon arrives in Times Square, where he tells the sewer workers that he's looking for a prince. Robert gives some money and tells her to take care of herself and leave, but instead of leaving, she goes and sits next to the old lady. She asks about Prince Edward and gives all her money to the old lady. Robert feels that anyone can take advantage of her, so he takes her back with him and also asks about Prince. Giselle tells that after just one day of love, she is going to marry Prince Edward. Then Robert talks about himself, saying that he has been in a relationship with Nancy for 5 years, but he has never proposed to her. Before getting into a relationship, people should go on dates, understand each other's likes and dislikes. How can someone say yes within a single day? Here Nathaniel gives free apple and he puts Pip inside a popcorn box. To fix Robert and Nancy's relationship, she sends flowers to Nancy. Robert thought that the plan wouldn't work, but then Nancy calls him and thanks him. Pip tries once again to warn Robert that Nathaniel has come here to kill Giselle, but this time Nathaniel catches Pip and hangs him on a hanger. Robert tells Giselle that maybe no one will come to save her. Hearing this, Giselle starts getting angry. Here she also realizes that she can get angry too. As Robert and Giselle spend more time together, they start getting closer. Meanwhile, in the morning, Giselle had modified a dress from the Morgan room using carpet. The three of them were sitting in the breakfast when suddenly the door knocks. It was none other than Edward. Seeing each other, they are feeling overjoyed. Edward believed that Robert was not a good man, but before he could do something, Giselle stopped him and said, "Please don't do anything to him." When Edward finally understood everything, he starts doing the same old things, trying to impress her. She told him, "Before we get married, I want to date you to truly understand things." She wants to learn about likes, dislikes. As she was about to leave with her prince, Robert and Morgan felt extremely sad. They had grown attached to her. Giselle, before leaving, promised them, "We will meet again." Meanwhile, Nerissa confronts Nathaniel, telling him, "You failed." Nathaniel pleads, "Give me one more chance. I will make everything right." But this time, Nerissa wants to handle things on her own. That's why she decides to enter the real world herself. Edward wanted to go back in any way in his world, where he wanted to make Giselle his princess. But she said, "Let's go to the party one last time after that. We'll go back together forever." However, there was no one to guide her about party, so she went to Morgan for help. They picked up Robert's credit card, and the two of them went shopping. They shopped a lot, and while spending time together, Morgan started feeling like she is her mother. In the party, Edward and Giselle enter. Seeing them, Nancy is left staring at Edward, realizing how romantic he truly is and how he always keeps Giselle. It was time for them to leave. Before leaving, Giselle looks at the Robert and starts crying because she doesn't want to leave him. But at that moment, Lady entered. Lady influences, telling her that she can erase all her memories and start fresh, as she doesn't want to remember Robert when she returns to her world. As she biddies, she faints and falls, and Nerissa returns to her true form. Seeing her mom, Edward doesn't understand what she did with Giselle. But now, Nathaniel reveals everything about Nerissa, that she planned to kill Giselle. At this moment, Edward remembers that true love's kiss was the only thing that could revive Giselle. As soon as Edward kisses Giselle, she comes back to life after midnight. The dark mist covering her neck fades away. Using black magic, Nerissa transforms into a dragon and attacks her again. But then, Edward tells her she will have to go through him first. Eventually, Nerissa climbs too high, and because the tower is unstable, she falls. Falling from such a height, she dies. Finally, Robert proposes to Giselle, and Nancy proposes to the Edward. Their families live together happily ever after. And with that, this amazing movie comes to an end.